You're loud.
I'm louder?
Yeah, there's no question.
Well, we're going to talk about starting a little bit. We're going to talk about some of the tactics, and we'll talk about some gear shifting. So, first thing, I want to talk about starting. I want to talk about where everybody thought they should start, what seemed to work, what didn't work. And we're going to start with Evan. So, Evan, talk to us about your starting process and where you found the best success.
Well, we found the best success on the third start over by the boat. That was definitely our best start. The two previous were sort of mediocre starts. We started right on top of you one time. That didn't work out very good. And yeah, the first start we were over by the pin, which was sort of okay, but we ended up having to bail out. We thought we were lifted bailing out, so we sort of caught back up a little bit by being able to lift the tackle with that.
Mike?
I can tell you how not to do it.
Well, yeah, why don't you tell me?
The pin is here. Don't try starting down here.
Oh, okay.
And this is actual boat length. And this is actual boat length. It's about, actually, I don't think my arms go that far apart. It doesn't work that way. Yeah, no, I think it was just a day of kind of getting into your own space and getting into your own area on the line, because I think with the current going out, the pin was, with the current pushing you off the line, the pin was really easy to get too close to too early. And so being a little bit further up the line, everyone tended to stack down at the pin. And so, as Evan said, some freedom up near the boat end, and that kind of middle up near the boat end gave you a lot of space to be able to actually play your own race and sail your own race. And I don't know whether that's what you guys found as well, but that was what we found.
Yeah, I think starting strategy-wise today, I think was a combination of, trying to find a low density spot. That's always our goal, trying to be where a ton of boats aren't, so you have a greater, chance of getting off and sailing clean. So for me today, it was kind of balancing. It looked to me, what we were finding was it seemed like the pin wasn't necessarily, favored. A lot of times the day we maybe kind of wanted to keep an eye on the left and more or less get to the left, but for me, it seemed like the boat or middle of the line was actually up a bit, and not only did it give you some freedom to not to have the risk of being over or with no options at the pin, but there were some sort of right shifts early, and the line, so you're kind of looking. We kept looking at line bias inside 2 minutes, doing wind shots, and most of the time we found that the boat, or it wasn't super pin favored, even though everybody kind of had an eye on the left. So we kind of balanced out shifting down the line progressively as the day went on. We kind of had a similar strategy. My first strategy was pin third, then it was like middle, and then the last one was boat third. And it just seemed like early in the leg, the right would work a little bit. So it worked out.
Yeah, I think all of us do kind of the same thing as looking for low density areas. Again, the pin wasn't super favored, but the long-term goal, I guess, of the first beat was to be somewhat left of center on the course. So I think that tricked us to start at the pin a lot, but it was a lot harder to get out of that left corner if you weren't going as well as you wanted to or whatever. So the boat end seemed okay, but really at the end of the day, it was good enough anywhere to pick if you had an opening to take a big hole and start there. There wasn't really an end that I thought was favored. One thing you have to remember about the ends though, one boat gets off there. So whether it's the boat end, whether it's the pin end, only one wins that spot, and everybody else that's close to those kind of gets hurt. So yeah, pin third, we talk about thirds a lot, pin third, boat third, even the middle, if you're not sure where you're gonna go up the course, it's a good kind of what we look at. So I think a lot of us are trying to do the same thing.
So why were you favoring the left side of the course going up there? Was it the current, and were you able to get far enough left to get to the shelf over there?
Yeah, so great question over here. Why was everybody thinking about the left up the first beat or most beats here? And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit on the strategy here for everybody, but I'll talk about our strategy first. I think the left side, the leg was long enough, 1.2 miles, 1 mile, that the left side did have a shallower shelf, and it seemed like you you could get flatter water up there too. So when you went on the port tack, you weren't chopping wood the whole time. I thought earlier in the beat that you would be slamming the waves pretty good if you tacked and went on port tack early. So left seemed better. There was a little bit of shift too there. The Severn River, I think, affects the bend of the breeze a little bit too. So the left seemed okay there. That being said, I got passed by the right like 3 or 4 times. So I never wanted to be passed by the left. I said if we get passed by the right, that's okay. But I think the shelves up there are, for us, that seemed what it was. Chris, how about for you guys? What do you think?
Yeah, that was the big topic, and I think we probably all have the same mindset. I kept looking at, from yesterday, right? A lot of people did the practice race. I think one of my takeaways when we started more at the boat was, shit, we really got to get left, and it's just better and better. There's less current. Now today, maybe the quadrant was slightly more right, so it wasn't as huge to get out of the current there. But I thought it was like you really had to pick and choose your time to be in the left. There was a little relief, and up in the top half of the leg, it was, at the end of the day, there was better pressure there. But you could be right early and still get over there. That's kind of what I saw. So we tried to pick and choose, get a little bit of a, if we were down a little bit on port tack, we try to take that number and get across in a good puff and get across to the right. But in general, I thought you could, getting there too early was risky, because you really got to wait for everyone to go. And down lower in the leg, there was, I thought, a little bit of a right shift. So you kind of had to pick and choose your time to get over there. But long range, I was still like, my goal was like at the top 50% of the leg, I want to be on the left. That was what I thought.
Mike, how about you guys' strategy?
I mean, at the risk of getting told that I wasn't doing my job because I was looking around for my guys, right? I think it was.
What did you hear?
Right. What did I hear? Well, I heard. I was only listening. I heard that I think, of course, it might have been just as you were saying. The breeze was a little bit further right, so it actually made it that lower left corner might not have been as strong as we were all expecting, which is why the course was more open at the bottom. When you went around the gate, you could kind of go either gate. You might be able to get to the right, and it might have been just, not that the right was all that much better, it was just that lower left might not have been getting really any of the righties, where in that lower part of the course, you might get a couple of the little right flicks that were coming down the race course, and then as you progressed up, as you got closer to the land, I think the simple answer was the left side was going to be strong. Just as you got close to the land, you were out of the current, you were kind of on that line of left pressure that was coming down out of the bay up there. You were able to get to that left line of pressure, and that was really able to kind of get those boats around the boats on the right later in the upwind. But I think for sure at the bottom, the race course was a little bit more open than we were seeing yesterday, and than I think everyone was expecting, which is also probably why the committee vote was working and so on.
And Evan, you're leading, so your strategy is perfect. Well, wasn't it?
Well, it certainly wasn't perfect, but yeah, we basically the same thing. We wanted to get left, but we thought that there was a lot of opportunities back and forth. There was some shifts to be had, and sometimes we found ourselves like taking back right because we just wanted to be on the left attack, and so we were just finding opportunities whenever we could to keep getting left, but we kept sort of talking ourselves into being on port more than we thought. Certainly, again, the bottom half. By the top half, top third, we were really wanting to be top left.
So, from what I gather, the course was a little bit more open than we're used to in this breeze. Not hard left early. And Jay Miles, our tactician, did a really good job. I thought, second beats, there was some righties, there were some lefties, so we tried to stay in phase as much as we possibly could without going too far right.
On the left, you were running out of lanes. If you went too far, it was you could not get out of there. Like you just had to keep going further than the next guy. So
yes.
We kind of got out of the left when we saw that everybody was getting a little too far that way.
Yeah. So keeping the lanes open, and the course was a little more open. It might be different tomorrow, but today that's what it was. So we always talk about rig tune, but today was a pretty funky day. So between thinking it's breezy to going through a 5-knot hole or whatever it was. So I'm going to ask these guys Chris, you want to start it off with where you had your rig tune and where you ended up today?
Yeah, we were at 2 steps up from base on our setting, which is about 27, 24. In the first race, we might actually had an extra half turn on the lower because we wanted a little straighter mast and ability to put more backstay on. And as the day went on, we felt really fast upwind, and we maybe should have gone down a step in the last race or two. There were some light spots, but one of the things I used to determine it was I would ask Aiden, I'd say, are you is your backstay off all the way, and then you're still really starving for power? And there were a few moments at our 2-step up setting where things got a little sticky, where I think we could have been a little looser, but we stayed the whole day 2 steps up, just to cut to the chase, I guess. We played the halyard a little bit. We fluffed the outhaul up a little bit if it got lighter, but most of the day, and then we used the backstay. We had the backstay, I think, set up just right. I think that's an important feature, is to kind of understand that you have the full range of your backstay. Just kind of always adjusting those turnbuckles as you change your rig. And I thought we had that set up pretty well, where when it was all the way off, we had it wasn't tight, but we had a full range to go through because there were a lot of ups and downs. But we were the whole day 2 steps up.
And Evan, how about you guys?
We started the day 2 steps up with a 1/4 inch forward on the butt. We thought it was kind of windy when he first came out, but we thought the second run the wind started to drop. So right after that, we took the butt back to neutral and went to 1 up and spent the rest of the day there.
Good, Mikey?
Yeah, we were 2 or almost 3 steps up on the first race, and then we went down to. We thought the lulls were pretty big, and I think that was the big thing. It kind of seemed windier than it was out there. At least that was the feeling that we got. And so then we backed off to 1 step up for the second race, and then back to 2 steps up for the third race. Very, I think 1 step up, at least for us, where we had it set up, felt a little bit that we couldn't really get the boat pointed upwind the way we wanted it to. And then the 2 steps up was a pretty all-purpose setting. But the thing that we were thinking about was just the fact, exactly as you were saying with the backstay, is that if I have the backstay eased for a good portion of the upwind and it's eased a lot, then it's probably time to go lighter on the rig to help to power the boat up and get the boat going.
Yeah, no, I pretty much was exactly the same as you guys. I had 2 steps up in the first race, 2 steps up in the second race, 1 step up in the third race. My biggest thing here is I just feel like I don't ever want to start for power. So if I'm a little overpowered, I have tools for that, backstay, traveler, bang, stuff like that. But for me, then I think it's just a personal thing. Like I think we were 1 step only on the second race. And I just feel like if we can have power, I can always shed power, but I can't gain too much more power after I ease a backstay or out. So that's kind of where we were at today. That's really all I have to discuss. Do we have questions that we could answer? Yes.
So my first question is about, so in the first race we had a great start and a great beat, and we were able to hold in Tony Parker, point-wise and speed. And then we spent a lot of time in bad air for the rest of the regatta or day, and not able to point as high. And so I'm wondering, when you're in bad air, what do you do to shift your driving and your trimming to accommodate for pointing as high as you can without sacrificing speed? Because we just can't point when we're in bad air, and we spend a lot of time in bad air. Say it
A
again.
90-degree turn tends to. I mean, it's just that's the simple answer is it's so hard. You're just trying to power the boat up and get the boat going, but it's so hard to sail in bad lanes. And if you can and you power the boat up and you absolutely have to, then you can make it work by easing the backstay, pulling the traveler up, powering the boat up, fluffing it up with the outhaul as much as you can, if you're feeling underpowered. But trying to be the same height as people around you when you're in a really bad lane is it's not gonna it's gonna be really, really difficult.
Yeah, and one of the other things about that is, you know, yeah, tacking out of that is great, but there are scenarios where you can't. And what do you do to kind of stay on the hip of somebody, right? Well, this is where the speedo for me comes in huge, because you're gonna lose speed. So, I mean, you're in bad air, right? But in order to keep that lane and your ladder run where you are, I may drop, I may look at the speed and say, okay, I'm going 5.5. Well, I want to go 5.1. You're going to go 3-4 tenths slower, but you'll stay same angle if you have to. And then, so I really start, when I'm in kind of a bad lane and Jay says, you got to live here, I go right to the speedo. And I just say, okay, well, my normal speed is this. I can only go this much slower, else it doesn't work anymore. So, you know, you got to, it's a fine line. You can tack a 90-degree turn is great.
90-degree turn.
Hope that helps. Anything else? For downwind? God, I'm bad at downwind. Chris, you seem pretty quick, and Evan seems very quick. So
Yeah, I thought downwind was kind of an interesting, a very similar scenario to upwind, where you could sort of go too far. But for the most part, I thought as you're facing upwind, the left-hand side upwind was pretty powerful downwind, right? There were most of the racing today, I felt like gains were had. If you were going to pass someone, it's going to be that side. Just was a little bit better streaking puff, but you could, managing that and a clear lane was sort of our balancing act, right? We wanted to be kind of a little leftmost, but then checking in with that pack, because a lot of times if you get out there with the current doing what it was doing, you could easily get, later in the day it was easy to get too far, right? And then you're jibing and you're really hot coming into the pin or the lure gate, right? So I just kept constantly looking for where the best pressure is and watching your lane, but trying to be, the passing lane for me was that side, right? But then getting in that pressure and just taking it down to minimize the risk of getting too far out there. Because I think that could also happen too. It was like the last beat upwind, there was a few times you could get too left and you ended up like footing into the mark a little bit. Same thing kind of happened downwind. I felt like a little later in the day, you could get gain there, but if you took it too far and didn't sort of check in with a jibe or sailing as deep as possible in that lane, that's what I saw.
Evan, how about you guys? I mean, between your strategy and just ultimate speed, you guys are doing the best. So what do you do?
Well, for the first couple races, we thought that there was quite a lot of ways that you could work with. So, we were doing our best to be pumping the main, working the boat, and trying to make sure we were making the most of those waves. For the third race, maybe there was a little bit, but not really much left in that. So, I would just basically agree with Chris that most of the time we were going down, and the angle was there when we came around the windward bar. So, continuing on starboard after we ran it most of the time, and just staying on the bank, making sure the main's powerful, looking at top bat orientation, and making sure you got as much power in that main as possible. And that's it.
All right. Anything else?
So driving upwind today, were you more on the main sheet or the backstay?
So driving upwind, was I depowering with main sheet or backstay? Early in the day, the first race, I was depowering with main sheet because I had backstay on already. And then as it kind of got more holding, I was a lot backstay. Main sheet wasn't touched too much. If anything, I was asked to trim it in more a lot. So that told me trim it in as hard as I can, play the backstay through those puffs and balls. So the question is, downwind, what are we looking for? Fore and aft weight placement. Well, I know in lighter air we move the weight forward because we want to get the back end of the boat out of the water, a little less water line to deal with, a little less drag. And then as it gets windier, I want people as far out to the sides as they can to kind of counter the rolling that's starting to happen. And one of the things you can tell as it gets windier, if you start to get really rolly, you're probably too far forward because the bow's V, right? So if you get more of that V in, that's when it starts to turn a lot on you. So we just kind of back the weight up a little bit until the boat starts to stable out. Not a lot, probably a butt cheek or two back, and you're good. So that's what we think about that. Anything else? All right. One last thing. When you're done here, we do have beers at our loft. It's just down the street. Doesn't mean you have to leave here, but if you want to stop in and see the loft, feel free. It's just kind of an open house. So, all right. Good.